Pete Hegseth is the stupidest member of Donald Trump's administration. We just have to put it bluntly. That's the truth. And it's why no one's been surprised at the scandals and screw ups that we've seen at the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth's leadership. The only thing that's surprising is that seemingly Donald Trump is starting to notice, and he's not happy, with new reporting suggesting that he has abandoned Hegseth altogether as all hell breaks loose. We are going to get into that reporting and what it could mean for Pete Hegseth keeping his job. But before we do, I want to start with a little bit of context on who is informing Donald Trump as we potentially go to war with Iran, and that is a different Fox News host.
I hope the president of the United States has decided to take military action against Iran, not in defense, but just proactively, along with Israel. I hope so. That's what he had to say, Hugh Hewitt. And Fox's drumbeat to war is apparently working. I mean, Rolling Stone reported late today that according to an administration official and another close associate of the commander-in-chief, Trump's heavy consumption of Fox News content is increasing his appetite for direct military confrontation with Iran. Just let that sink in for a second. The president of the United States is refusing to believe the assessments of the entire intelligence community and instead is listening to whatever talking heads on Fox have to say about this conflict. And those hot takes of the day could have already determined, maybe they have, whether or not the U.S. goes to war. As the Wall Street Journal reports, Trump has already approved attack plans for Iran, but is holding off to see if Tehran will abandon its nuclear program. Something, by the way, that Iran has ruled out publicly on multiple occasions. So look, there are certain moments when we are reminded why leadership matters in the Oval Office. I mean, the question of war and peace is certainly a big central, maybe the biggest one, of when to put American lives at risk. It's one of the hardest things that comes on the desk of any president. But this president treats the potential for war as a game. And he's taking his cues from Netanyahu and Fox News. This isn't a story, really, about some high-minded debate over what America first really means, or even about MAGA on MAGA disagreement. This is a story about an insecure kid watching TV and playing Battleship.
I thought the point of hiring the Fox News host as your Secretary of Defense is that you didn't have to watch Fox for your advice on defense. Isn't that why you got Pete? So he could wear the America flag tie and do the bells and whistles and, dance to keep Donald Trump's attention during his security briefings because he can't actually read? The man can't read. But no, he still has to watch Fox, the insane host at his propagandist network, to get any sort of idea of what's happening with American foreign policy. And that's where he's getting his advice from Mark Levin, from Jesse Waters. Really? That is terrifying. Now, we've reported on this in the past, but it only continues to get worse and escalate as we see conflict erupt in the Middle East. And what is Pete Hegseth doing during all of this? Everything but his job, apparently. And when he's doing his job, he's doing it poorly. And that is one of the reasons Trump is, well, we'll see what Trump is doing. But first, we need to get a look at some of those scandals from Tammy Duckworth, who called out all the failures of Hegseth here.
You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our First Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no Navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about more than all of this is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming basis for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama.
It has been failure after failure for Pete Hegseth, which is why it is no surprise that Donald Trump is reportedly not looking to him for any advice on the escalating conflict in the Middle East. So much so that he's just completely abandoned him. And we can see that in some breaking reporting right here. Trump Insider reveals nobody is talking to Hegseth as Iran crisis spirals. Donald Trump is sidestepping his own defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, while seeking advice on whether to launch a military strike against Iran, according to a report. An unnamed U.S. official told the Washington Post that the president is instead turning to a couple of four-star generals for guidance on whether to join Israel in attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, with the head of the Pentagon being largely left out. Nobody is talking to Hegseth, the official said. There is no interface operationally between Hegseth and the White House at all. Speculation is mounting that Trump may be willing to start a war with Iran to prevent it from acquiring a nuclear weapon, but Trump has already signed off on attack planes but has not yet given the final go-ahead to execute them, CBS News reported. When asked if the U.S. was getting closer to striking Iran's nuclear facilities at the White House on Wednesday, Trump less helpfully replied, "I may do it. I may not do it." Hegseth, a former Fox News host whose lack of military experience raised eyebrows when he was picked to lead the Pentagon, does not appear to be convincing Trump to make a decision one way or another. Instead, the president is leaning more heavily on top military brass like four-star General Jack Cocchiarella, nicknamed the Gorilla, who leads U.S. Central Command and oversees operation in the Middle East, according to the Post. So even Donald Trump recognizes that Pete Hegseth is just a complete moron, and his advice means absolutely nothing, which would then lead you to maybe think, hey, Donald, if you don't trust your Secretary of Defense to inform you and to do his job, maybe he shouldn't be Secretary of Defense. What are we doing here? If you could recognize that he's a failure and you don't want him to consult on the most important issues facing our nation, then maybe he's not qualified for the job. Send him back to Fox. He can keep the American flag ties, but maybe not, our military secrets. Maybe we should keep those away from Pete the Leak Hegseth. Can we come to that consensus? Would that be too much? But it's not just Pete's inability to have a functioning brain or not put down the the sauce. It's also Trump's ridiculous foreign policy strategy that is putting us all in such chaos and jeopardy. And Senator Mark Warren broke that all down with the crisis that is Donald Trump tweeting about foreign policy, as we can see right here.
Foreign policy by tweet is insane. And that's what this guy is doing. The truth is, the one thing that Tulsi Gabbard, who I think is way over her skis in terms of competence on this. She did say that Iran had taken no action towards moving towards a bomb. And we got reconfirmed as early as Monday of this week that the intelligence hasn't changed. So then you've got the president basically dismissing all of the intelligence. I have no foggy idea what American policy is right now towards this circumstance. I'm the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee. If I don't have the foggiest idea, what do the American people know? And for that matter, what do our few friends remaining around the world know? Last week he was saying Israel can do this on our own without our help. Now, we have been helping them defensively. But now making these threats on tweet, what does unconditional surrender mean? Who is Iran supposed to surrender to? And as I said a little more respectfully, you start a war in the Middle East, it's easy to start. They are hard to end. And I thought the American public, one of the reasons I hired this guy was not to create endless wars in the Middle East. And with a lack of a policy, without any brief to Congress, for him to potentially take this action. And let me just make one last quick comment here. There is no guarantee that a single run of an American airplane dropping bunker busters are going to permanently set back Iran's nuclear program. So what do we do then?
It's a good question. You're a member of the Gang of Eight. You get the most sensitive intelligence we have. You have access to it. Would you normally be looped in on a decision to use a bunker-busting bomb, say, on a nuclear program, or a decision to attack or help aid in an attack on a foreign country?
Absolutely. Even under Trump 1, there was regular contact. But now, and we ignore our intelligence community at our own risk. Remember when intelligence was corrupted and that got us into Iraq? If this president is just going to ignore the intelligence community, why do they even do their job? And the fact that there's not been any Gang 8 brief, matter of fact, Director Gabbard canceled a brief with the Intelligence Committee this afternoon. She said she had to go to the White House. I will grant her that. But if I have no idea what our policy is or what our goal is, then what does the rest of the world and the American people have to turn to? This is not the way our system is supposed to work. What is the timeliness of requiring any action in the next X number of hours? No one has made that case. So I think we are treading on not only really challenging times, but this is a level of irresponsibility out of this administration that, frankly, I thought I couldn't be surprised anymore. But if the president takes this kind of action without any communication to the American people, or the world for that matter, why? And what next after bombing Run 1? And what happens if 40,000 American soldiers and personnel in the Middle East suddenly get attacked? What is next? He does not have, I don't think, even amongst my Republican friends, that there is not much confidence that he's got a plan here.
Well, listen, you also have the authority in Congress to try to pull him back, to pass a war powers resolution. And there's been talk about that. And there's at least one Republican in the House who's co-sponsoring a bill with a Democrat. But I haven't heard about any Republican senators. No. You tell me.
So far, there's not. My friend, your friend Tim Kaine, has got a War Powers Act bill that'll be up next week. We're still trying to work to get the language right. I sure as hell hope that people of goodwill of both parties would stand up and reassert Congress's authority. Remember, War Powers Act was put in place since presidents didn't come to Congress for declarations of war.
We are all in a very dangerous place because we have the dumbest man in our country as our president. Clearly confused on what he wants to do as a MAGA civil war breaks out over his broken promise of no new wars. And what we're left with is a declining Trump trying to figure out how to stay popular while not being swayed by early morning Fox News hits convincing him to go to war with Iran. That is the current state of things. We could have had Kamala. Can't believe people voted for this guy. But we're going to keep calling it out on this show and reporting. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.